All right, here it is. Check this out. So this has been a long time coming. This is one of the coolest looking processors I think I've ever seen. And the rumors are right. This is maybe the best feeling volume knob I've ever felt. That just feels really nice. I don't know if it's kind of special ball bearings or something, but that's super smooth. So volume knob, you get your standby power on off button here. And then here we have your source and then menu selection buttons as well. And if you press down, that looks like it's going to be the OK. And then you have some LED displays on these sides here, which we'll check out when we turn it on. This is, of course, your standard 17-inch rack mountable component. Swing this around. And here we've got XLR outs for all 16 channels. There are 2, which seems to be expansion ports. So I do believe this has an expandable architecture. So if there is something that came out that, like a new HDMI or something like that, you could probably just unscrew these and pop in a new board, which is really nice that this is upgradable. And then here on the bottom, we do have 5 HDMI 2.1 inputs, 2 HDMI outputs. We got 2 USB ins, we got your LAN connection, RS-232. This is where you put in your calibration mic input. 1, 2, 3, 4 optical audio ins. This is your AES EBU input. It's got your coaxial audio in. And then if you want to run your digital streamer, there's a USB audio in as well as a bunch of triggers. And here on the corner is your power inlet. Now this does support all of the main formats: Dolby Atmos, Dolby Surround, DTS HD, DTS X, Aural 3D. It does all that, but let's go ahead and get this thing set up. We just did the unboxing. I set everything up. I had to rewire everything from the Trinov over to the MP-60, which if you have your labels set correctly, it would go a lot easier, let me tell you. Anyways, I figured it out, but we're just gonna touch on a little bit of history of the Lyngdorf processors, or just Lyngdorf in general. I know some of you guys might know Steinway Lyngdorf from the piano company.
My name's Lee Rambler. I'm an Eastern manager for Steinway Lyngdorf here in the US. Great to be here.
Yeah, so what's the connection with Steinway?
So there's a whole fun backstory, but essentially it boiled down to family members from Steinway being fairly disappointed in a pretty expensive purchase of an audio system that didn't sound like their pianos. And they knew Peter Lyngdorf, our namesake, who essentially had a hold my beer moment and created a mock-up of our first speaker, the Model D, and they played them in a blind test and couldn't hear the difference between somebody live playing the piano and it being played back through the speakers. And rather than them saying not only do we want them, they said we would like our name on them, and thus began a partnership between the two companies to bring what we both consider the best possible sound in the market.
So now instead of making pianos, you guys are making home theater processors.
Right. Well, so Steinway still makes the pianos. They are their own company for that. And we are an independent company, Steinway Lyngdorf SL Audio, that we build the audio. We build speakers, we build processors, we build amplifiers, we build integrated amplifiers, and we design, manufacture, and build everything, including some OEM work for some people in Denmark. So you're playing with one of the processors here today, which has a couple of our core technologies, but we have a few things that we think are unique to us that make us who we are.
I know a lot of the home theater processors right now are kind of moving over to going all digital from the processor straight to the amp, but you guys have been doing it for quite some time, right?
Been doing it for a while, yeah. And the trick is a lot of things. At this point, most of the media we consume starts as ones and zeros, right? Whether it be streaming music or HDMI from a Kaleidoscape or a Blu-ray or a Roku or whatever your source content is, there's still some analog stuff out there. There's turntables. There's no getting around that.
Yep.
So those have to be converted into digital. But otherwise, we're consuming our media as ones and zeros. And one of our goals is to leave them ones and zeros, because every time you have to convert back to analog, back to digital, there's potential of errors, right? I call them translation issues. So our goal is we want to leave that as far through as we can. And like in the MP-60, we'll pass all the way through. If we do any of the optional boards, like for DCI or AES, we can even pass through to the amplifier digital. A lot of people are used to taking an unbalanced or balanced output to an amplifier, which we do in the MP-60. In our integrateds, we never do that. We leave ones and zeros the whole way through. We have no analog conversion in front of our DSP or in front of our volume control. In fact, we don't even control volume at the input signal level. We adjust the output stage. That way we don't have amplification of noise. And in our Steinway line, same thing. We carry things through to the amplifier even at the digital level.
Is there a real benefit going straight digital rather than analog over to your amps?
Well, there is. So if we have to convert from digital back to analog, there's another translation. And the biggest likening I'll give to it is if I want to learn about physics, do I want to read the English written handbook, or do I want to read the version that was translated English to Spanish, Spanish to German, German to English, right? There's an opportunity for error and translation issues there. So if I can remain digital through, that's better.
Nice. Okay.
Can't always do that. Depends on your amplifiers, but we like to when we can.
All right, so the big thing with the MP-60, with the Lyngdorf stuff, is the room correction is room perfect.
Yep, room perfect. It was actually the largest filing for a patent ever in the audio-video industry. It's, at this point, like 5th generation of what room correction is. Again, Peter Lyngdorf actually was involved in the original RCS room correction system, which was as simple as taking a reading in the room and creating the inverse of the frequency response to, in theory, fix the things. Things are very different with Room Perfect. We've come a long way. We're not just reading frequency, we're reading in the time domain and the power domain. So we're reading power over time, we're reading decay, and we're reading impulse response, that we try and correct things a little different. The other thing is we don't try and flatten the speaker. We try and fix the room, both in the time domain and some in the frequency that is something common to the room. That our goal is to try and leave the voice of the speaker as it was, because our thought is if you bought a specific speaker, you bought it because you like it. If we try and make it neutralized, well, that kind of takes away the character of that speaker.
Right.
We'll still let you do that if you want to, but most people, if they bought, say, an 801D or a Klipsch or hopefully one of our speakers, whatever speaker it is they bought, the thought is that they're probably in love with that speaker. Let's try and leave that speaker.
So this is the layout page that we're looking at. And as you guys can see, I have all 16 channels hooked up, plus I've got an LFE channel and then 2 left and right subwoofers. Now, are those still, the left and right subs, are those still considered LFE, or are those dedicated full range subs?
The answer to that is yes. It depends what you want to do with it. So what we did when we were setting up yours here is they are carrying some LFE channel, as well as they are stereo left and right woofers, that any effects on any of the other channels that happen to the left or right side are directed there. And at Lyngdorf, we're big believers in stereo bass. While you're not supposed to be able to tell directionality on low frequency, in the real world we find you can, and we think that improves the staging and the depth perception in the system. So like in Steinway, we'll only allow you to do stereo subs. In Lyngdorf, we are much more flexible. It's a component-based type thing that will let you do what you want. But because you already had stereo woofers, we set them up stereo. And because you have that giant 21-inch sub, we thought, why not take advantage of that also, and we put that on the LFE. So we do have some LFE remix going on to your front channels, as well as dedicated LFE only playing the LFE channel.
And let's say if you had some big left and right towers, you can just go and select your speaker, go to select speaker size, and you could go XXL, which would also redirect bass to the speakers as well as those left and right subs?
Right, so XXL will redirect LFE channel to those. So yeah, if they're big monsters and they will play the real low lows, we can redirect the LFE to those as well as its channel. Or if we just leave it at XL, it'll only take the full range of its channel and not redirect the LFE to it.
And of course, you have some predetermined crossover points here, 40, 80, 100, 120.
Right.
Then if you want to go into custom, you can also select
do
your
anything
own.
we want. Yep.
So you can change that there. Also, we had mentioned that if you wanted to add your own EQs, your own PQ filter, I mean, you have some preset ones for your own Lyngdorf speakers themselves. Right. But if you wanted to go and do your own, you can go add new EQ, create EQ, and then here you can see that you can select you can give it a name.
Yep, which is wise, because then let's say we have the same front 3 channels. If I create an EQ profile for that speaker, I can then apply it to each of those channels from those presets, as opposed to having to manually do it again.
Got you. And then for your filter type, we've got bypass, and then of course you can do your PEQ here. Parametric EQ, choose your frequency EQ, and then gain, and then you have your low shelf, high, low, and then high pass as well. So
Right.
pretty easy to navigate once you actually dig into the menu there.
Yep, pretty flexible, and that's
Yep.
going to be per speaker. We do also have the ability to create our own voicings, which are preset EQs. That would be global also. So it just depends where you want to tailor that. Personally, I like to do voicings because I can also toggle them on and off pretty quick. So if I want to shoot for a curve that I want to have that adjustment, maybe I don't want that all the time. And that would allow me to quickly from the app or from the remote or an IP trigger from a control system to toggle between those, be it a natural, which is essentially a flat, or one of our preset ones or one you build. So different ways you can do it. It's all about what you want to do with it. I'm a fan of easy and quick to toggle off because I find a lot of those preset EQ curves might work well for one thing, but maybe not for everything.
Amplifier delay, that's what I want to get into.
Yeah, amp delay is if I've got different amplifiers in the chain that have different signal delay. Say I'm doing a sub amp that has a built-in DSP. Well, one, we want to bypass the DSP because we want to keep everything on the same phase plane by doing it in our processor because we have plenty of processing power. But that DSP may incur some delay in the signal path, so we might have to make up for that. So hopefully the manufacturer tells you what their signal path delay is, that we can insert that there. That way all our time alignment is correct based on our measurements.
And this is the first time I'm hearing about this. Like, it should be somewhere in the literature, in the manual or something.
Should be, yes, should be. Yeah, I don't know if everybody has it, but I've certainly seen several manufacturers tell you, they've got a 200 millisecond incurred delay or 30 millisecond incurred delay, that we're then going to take that into account as we do our delays amongst our speakers.
Got you. This is the first time I've seen this in a processor, this feature.
Yeah?
Yeah, at least I think so. I've never seen it before in anything else. So once you guys are setting this up and you got your speakers all set, you're supposed to follow this in order from speaker setup, verify speakers, which once you hit start, it'll cycle through all of your channels. It'll play pink noise through it, just to make sure everything is all
Got
correctly.
the right speakers hooked up in the right places.
So once you go through that, we have the adjust sub setting. You hit start, you'll hear some pink noise come out of the left front speaker, and then it'll take a measurement of that, and then it'll move over to the subwoofer as well. And you'll adjust the gain on the subwoofer to get everything matched up. From there, we move over to Room Perfect. So you can't skip from speaker setup and jump over to Room Perfect. You got to go in order.
Right. Consider that a pre-balance.
Yeah. So once you go to Room Perfect, just so you guys know, if you have a lot of speakers, if you got 16 speakers, 14 speakers, it's going to take a little bit.
Yep.
It's going to take a while.
Yeah, but I would say it was about an hour and 15
Yeah,
minutes.
it's about an hour, so be prepared. And when you guys are setting up the microphone, the way that you guys do it, you can just pretty much place it anywhere.
In fact, you want to. So there's one specific location. We want to read your focus position. We're checking levels to that area. We're checking what's going on around, and we're reading the frequency response in that spot. And then at the other spots, we're comparing that to see what the speakers are and aren't doing and what the room is and isn't doing. But the point is we specifically want it to be random because we're trying to find out what's going on throughout the room.
Right. And the mic can go either direction, whatever direction you want.
In fact, we want to, yeah. So it's not that it's a fully omnidirectional mic. It is a specific special mic, even has a special tip, pretty high quality piece of equipment that we include with all the Lyngdorf gear. Steinway, we actually sell it separate because typically end users aren't setting it up themselves. And then a dealer, you don't have to buy it on every job, but we include this piece with it. A lot of the positions, we want to point that mic different directions because we want to see what's happening throughout the room, not just one spot in the room.
Right. So you want to capture pretty much.
Right.
the
So we
entire
want to
room.
do different heights, different directions,
Yeah.
pointing up, pointing down. Again, idea is completely random. I want some of all of them though.
Do you know how many positions? Is there a max amount of positions?
Probably. I don't know what it is. I'll be willing to bet it's 256. I am confident nobody's ever going to go that high. I think we ended up with 9, including our focus position here, which is what I find I typically do.
So when you take the measurements, it'll go through like 3 different stages of different test tones.
Right. So it's actually separate high and low frequency, and we're doing some as a whole, trying to figure out what's going on, and then we'll read each speaker independently at high frequency because the echo works different. we're actually reading in a different filter at high frequency from low frequency based on how long the decay is. Then it does low frequency, and then we go around the other channels one at a time. And, well, when you have as many speakers as you do, it's a whole lot. That's why it adds up in time.
And just as you guys have just heard, it does sound like organ notes from a horror movie. So it can get kind of creepy the first time you hear it.
A little bit, yeah, with some weird pulsing going in. And it's interesting, the system knows what it's listening for, so ambient noise doesn't ruin it. As we found when I don't shut up, we're in here talking, it takes longer when there's other ambient noise, but it does not affect it. So cars going past or an air conditioner coming on won't ruin your measurement, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so I take it that if we're talking, it'll still keep reading until we stop talking, then it'll carry on.
So it'll catch in between breaks, and it also knows what it's listening for, so it can ignore certain things. It's just it has to kind of see what's going on and what to throw out and what to capture, so it does take longer. We've talked the whole way through one and it worked, so it wasn't like it had to wait until we were completely done either. But we find it just takes longer. I think it's probably more of the calculating, the processing time than it is actually the capture time.
Gotcha. And then after you run through the whole room perfect scenario, next section here is your channel gain. So here you can actually set, your levels for Dolby DTS and then per Oro. And then of course you have your the actual levels that Room Perfect did take. So if you change this for Dolby DTS and you forgot what it was at default, you know it's right here. It
saves you going back into a menu and looking, right? So it's nice you can do it by format. That way, if you find DTS is always a little too hot on the LFE for you, instead of adjusting your LFE level overall, that might affect your experience on, say, some 2-channel music, depending on what your setup is. Here it only affects DTS soundtracks,
right?
Which is nice to have that flexibility.
And I noticed on the back of the MP60s is that there's 3 expansion bays there.
Right. Blank slots. We allow AES-3, AES-67, either just for 67 or for DCI, and a DCI DB25 board so that you can expand. If you want to do a DCI cinema, you can. We can be part of that signal chain. If you're a guy lucky enough to have, say, a Barker that does DCI and, say, a media block or another DCI server, we can actually do full DCI compliance.
So is this going to be remaining the same chassis from here on out for the foreseeable future? And do you think there's going to be some expansion, like larger, maybe channel counts in the future as well?
Probably not anything real soon in a channel count, because at this point we look at what the decoding channels are and processing channels, and currently the most content there is, and probably will be for the foreseeable future, is 14 channels. So the idea with extra decoding channels, if I want more sides or more subs, the idea is that you can do those. There's nothing extra you're missing in content, but maybe I need, if I have a 30-seat theater, maybe I've got, 4 rows of sides and they're far enough apart they need separate delay. Maybe I need processing channels for that. Or maybe I want to do all my crossover and time alignment for a whole bunch of subs. We're a fan of doing all our subs up front and doing arrays of them stacked. That actually, no matter what, it's still only 2 channels. It's just split signal to those, that they don't need the extra channels. But if I want to do 8 subs around the room, if I want to try and break up for that one magic seat, all the axial, tangential, and radial waves, and I want to do 8 subs, maybe I need extra channels. Personally, I'd just use an external DSP for that. I would still do a stereo output off of 2 outputs on it, but I could do that all through that. That right now, we don't really see a whole lot of need for the extra channels. Again, if people want to do more speakers, God bless, that's fine, no problem. If you do have a large mega room, actually in Steinway, we do up to 256 processing channels, so we can do bigger.
That's with the P300.
Correct, yeah, in the P300, we can actually do up to 256 processing channels. Again, that only matters in the Steinway world, though, because that processor will only work with our amps because it is a bespoke digital signal between the processor and the amp. It is killer stuff, and frankly, if you're doing a 300-seat theater, it's probably what you should be doing anyway.
We got everything all set up. I'm going to send him on his way. I'm going to sit back, listen to some tunes, watch a few movies. And is this as good as my Trinov? I guess we're going to find out. Now, as for equipment, I am still using the Trinov amplification with the MP-60 in a 7.3.6 speaker layout, which is 7 bed layer speakers, 6 tops, and 3 subwoofers. So as you saw on the setup screen, we had the left and right subwoofers, and the 21-inch was used for the LFE. All the subwoofers are also placed in front of the room behind the screen. Now, just a disclaimer, I only had the processor for about a week or so with on and off usage. So this isn't a long-term review. It's more of a first-hand, first impressions type of thing. Also, when we first set this thing up, I was using an all RBH 661s, which has their dual 6.5-inch drivers and a 1-inch AMT. A couple days before I sent the processor back, I got all RBH 821s in to replace the 661s, which you can see behind me. Now, these are much more capable speakers with dual 8-inch woofers and a 1x5-inch AMT, so keep that in mind. Well, the first demo that I checked out was everyone's go-to demo, Ready Player One. My first thought was, did I forget to turn on the 21-inch? Because I know this scene has a boatload of bass, and I could barely feel the engines rumble, and I definitely couldn't feel Kong jumping off of buildings. It also seemed like, possibly during calibration, Room Perfect might have thought the 661s could handle more bass than they actually could, because the drivers would start making some noises in certain times. This was mostly during really heavy bass impacts. Now, I can get the Trinov to do the same exact thing if I drop my crossovers down to 60 Hz. With that said, as far as directionality with placing effects in their respective spots in the room, it sounded exactly the same as it did on my Trinov. And I've heard this demo more times than I'd like to admit. The same goes for A Quiet Place. The noise floor in this was so quiet, I didn't hear any hiss or anything coming from the speakers during any of the quieter scenes or with just nothing playing at all. Of course, this is amplifier dependent as well. And for this scene, I heard very distinctly the alien come from the top left height channel speaker without any crosstalk with the top right speaker. There's also a very faint ticking timer in the left surround channel, which sounds like it's coming from my other room. So the soundstage had a really big, airy presentation, which again, sounded just like my Trinov. Now, sadly, when all the havoc did break loose in this demo, I did get those issues with some of the speakers working too hard. And I'm sure if I had more time with the processor, I could have reran calibration and tweaked some of the settings to make everything all right. But my takeaway was manual intervention might be necessary, so correction systems aren't always let it run and it'll be perfect. No pun intended. The good thing is the new speakers arrived, I reran calibration, had to do a little bit of tweaking with the subwoofers, and this is when the system came to life. First off, these bigger speakers in general just sound way better than small speakers with small drivers. Gone was the bottoming out when Kong was smashing the bridge, and the bass response was clean and neighbor-inducing fear was also intact. In Ready Player One, having the left and right subwoofers, there was a feeling of cars sounding like they were a touch heavier, especially coming on either the left or the right side of the screen, which is kind of like what REL likes to do by pairing LCRs with their own dedicated subwoofers, which they call REL 3D. I do have a couple videos on REL 3D on the channel if you want to do a quick search. But again, as for placing effects like Kong running behind the seats from back right to back left, sounded seamless. If you blindfolded me, I'm not sure I could tell you the difference between listening to the Lyngdorf and my Trinov. It actually processes that good. There's also a few scenes in the movie Weapons which has incredible bass and also happens to be very front heavy. It hits really hard between, I'd say, 30 and 40 Hertz. So when turning Room Perfect on and off, there was a touch more boominess with it off, which, by the way, can make bass feel heavier, so there is a chance you actually might like it off. But at the same time, when turning Room Perfect on, this does bring a bit more focus and more control to the subwoofers. So you'll get that hard tactile feel minus the extra lingering that sometimes happens, which again, you might like. The atmospherics throughout the movie with all the cleverly placed effects were always precisely placed in their distinct locations. And that of course is a combination of the Lyngdorf and some high quality speakers. Now my overall takeaway with the time that I had with this is that I'm not sure why Lyngdorf is not brought up more when we're talking about endgame processor. It's usually just Trinnov and Storm. And if we're just talking about high channel count systems, then yeah, Lyngdorf is not going to be in the discussion. But if you're doing 16 channels and below, like I said earlier, at this level, you are kind of splitting hairs for sound quality and channel processing. Comparing it to the Trinnov at 16 channels, if you're trying to save some spare change, then going with the MP-60 would be the smart move. I do think if they were able to expand the channel count, despite them thinking that 14 channels is all you need, they would 100% be in the top 3 in conversation for the end-all, be-all of processors. But I guess time will tell. Well, those are my thoughts on my limited time with the Lyngdorf MP-60 16-channel home theater processor. Have you guys heard one, and how do you think it sounds, and how do you think it compares to the other guys? Leave your comment down below and let me know. Now, if you do want to grab one of these, I will leave a link down below in this video's description to audio advice. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.